and also why so extreme? I mean, there's so many places, turns they could find places for the winter dwellings. Why do you have to go all the way to the Antarctic? But that's what they are doing. Yeah, here's a map of the routes they are taking. An even more amazing instance of an animal, or an insect in this case, a butterfly that's also migrating. It's a monarch butterfly. National Geographic had in 2003 an article about this butterfly and called it one of nature's greatest mysteries. These butterflies, it's an American butterfly, and they spend the summer in North America basically. Have it here, in like North, for example, here in northeastern U.S., southeastern Canada, and then in the autumn, butterflies, thousands and millions of these monarch butterflies, they start flying south, and they migrate all the way down here to a very quite small area in Mexico, a volcanic area. And there they spend their winter. Actually, they die. These butterflies fly down there, they die, but they eggs, and a new generation of butterfly is hatched. And as far as I know, there's even, just one generation of butterflies living there. They don't go anywhere. And then the next generation starts flying again north when spring comes. It doesn't make it all the way. It makes it, part of the way. And then this generation dies. But the new generation is again continuing flying north. I think there might even be one generation more. At least 2 or 3 generations make it up here. And then in summer, a couple of generations of butterflies are living up in these further northern areas. And then again, when it's autumn, then what was the great-grandchildren of the ones who previously made it, they start again flying down the same route, again like that. And National Geographic is one of the mysteries of nature, because how do they know it? I mean, butterflies don't have big brains. I think they have like a head of a pin, something like this, the brain of the butterfly. And who taught them? Because the last generation who made the journey was like 6, 7 generations back. How do they know it? How do they know?
It's also amazing the one who found out.
Yeah. That's a systematic observation. You have people who are, you have scientists who simply are studying these butterflies. And I don't know how they do it. I mean, they're there with them, and they thought they might fly with them, or something or other.
Are they trying to prove anything with that?
Huh?
Are they trying to prove anything with that?
I mean, these kind of scientists are observing, they're trying to study nature like that. But, I mean, it's not completely, has no relevance. I mean, to study nature, for example, you study insects. Some insects are plagues, pests for different crops and like that. You study their behavior. You maybe know how to counter them and like that, or derive benefit from them like that. It's it's definitely it's useful knowledge, but zoologists and biologists, they are simply this is part of what they are studying, and interesting in its own right. That another one, they might become butterflies themselves. Who knows? Probably. Maybe.
Because you develop the same mentality when, like, if you really get into like, oh, there's the butterfly fly.
Yeah. Good chance. So so what is going on in nature? What is the nature of nature that we are observing? This is the verse from the Bhagavad Gita. 1861, Isvara Samabhutanam Tishtati Brahmayan Samabhutanam Yantra Maya. The Supreme Lord is situated in the hearts of all over Arjuna, and is directing their wanderings while they're sitting as on a machine made of material energy. I think that verse is a very precise description of nature. That nature has there's matter, and as we've also seen in previous meetings, it's not just material processes, but it's actually matter in terms of yantras. It says here yantra, it's actually machines. This body is a machine, cells are machines, and so on. It's actually it's designed matter that is designed to be machines and so on. And then there is a conscious self, a soul, sitting in each of these bodies. And then there is a super consciousness which is directing the souls and giving, for example, sometimes inspiration to humans, and also giving same kind of, actually, we call it instinct in animals, but it's actually, might say it's the same thing as inspiration, giving animals inspiration to act. And that's actually that makes sense. That could be very well the explanation of what actually nature is. It actually explains nature completely. So that's ultimately that verse describes what is the nature of nature. There's matter, consciousness, super consciousness, like that. Huh? Maybe. Yeah, that's that presentation so far. Any questions on that?
It's just detail, but just a thought that came up to my mind. Is it about the butterflies? But I'm still stuck there. But is it possible that it's the same persons flying all the way, back and forth? They just get new bodies.
That might be possible. That's karma. Karma has all kinds of possibilities. In some cases, it can be the same. Maybe it makes sense because they actually make the journey many times. They just have new bodies. Yeah. So actually, they recognize the path back. That's not a material explanation, but it fits into this. But we don't know. There are souls who have the karmas who have butterfly bodies, and they will have butterfly bodies for number, maybe thousands of butterfly lifetimes, according to their karma like that. That's of course, that's individual. Some might just have the karma for one lifetime as a butterfly, sometimes.
For killing butterflies?
I don't know. Funny thing, sometimes I meet someone who believes in reincarnation, but is a little sentimental about it. Sometimes you ask, many women ask, what would you like to be in the next lifetime? Say, I like to be a butterfly. That's something. Because there's a nice flying.
Free.
Huh?
Free.
They're free and sunny. And
Side of the cocoon for quite some time.
Okay.
Forced to sleep and eat and
Yeah. This is a quote from Max Planck. Everyone knows Max Planck, a Nobel Prize laureate, one of the great quantum physicists of the 20th century, German. when he received his Nobel Prize in 1919 in Stockholm, he said in his speech that all matter are derived from and exist only because of a force. Was it force? We must assume that behind this force is the existence of a conscious and intelligent mind. And this mind is the origin of all matter. That was just a nice Max Planck quote. You see, I mean, many of these great scientists, the real top scientists, they're actually religious. The mediocre scientists, they're atheists. But the top scientists, like, and many of the great Nobel laureates, our own Bohr, Niels Bohr was actually also, he was reading Vedanta. I just found out a few weeks ago. And he had some really kind of religious. Einstein at one point was speaking with Gandhi and said, I think I'm more religious than you. Einstein said to Gandhi. Many of these big top scientists, famous scientists, they were, because actually at one point they just come to the end of what science can bring, and they just see this is, now we're talking mystical, and not mystical in terms of unexplainable, but it's simply in a different reality, a reality of God, a divine reality, a reality of mind. We're reaching here. I think that's the end of that presentation. It could be extended. One of my favorite examples of this is Robert Sheldrake. How many have heard about Robert Sheldrake? You heard about him? He's a British biologist. I think he is a professor of biology, biochemistry, or something like that. And he's conducting many very interesting experiments. And one interesting experiment that he made was with Pamela Smart and her dog Gaiti. Because actually he sometimes sometimes the idea that you have a dog, and this dog somehow or other is very connected with the owner. For example, when the dog is alone home, and now the owner is approaching, then the dog starts getting very restless. And it's, now my master is coming. And Sheldrake, he wanted to test actually, but is there some kind of a supernatural, paranormal connection between the owner and the dog? So he got in touch with this young woman from Manchester who had a dog. He put an ad in the newspaper, and she read it, she volunteered. So then actually for 2 years, and that was in the 90s, for a couple of years, 200 experiments were conducted with Pamela and her dog, where a video camera would be placed in the entry hall of her home, pointed towards the door, because it turned out that the dog would seemingly always, when she was approaching, he would go and lie by the door, so he was feeling what happened at the door, and then she would go out, and then she would record what was she, what was she, where did she go, how far, where did she go, and when did she, and then record. Now we start going back. And then back home the video was running. It was a time code. There was a clock. So then you could actually see, find the correspondence between her notes and what the dog was doing. And in the beginning, she was going very regularly because she was working, but then she was fired. She was laid off. when she was unemployed. And that meant actually her life became quite irregular. She would go and leave whenever she felt like. Because they thought in one sense that the dog is actually, she goes at every day at the same time to wait for her. But that must be because he knows it by, it's just happened, he knows it. This time she comes home. But now she didn't come home any specific time. But still, the dog king still went there to when she was gone home. So they conducted 200 experiments like that, changed the conditions a little. Sometimes she went out on her own, decided when she would come back on her own. Sometimes she was told to go out, and then Sheldrake had a beaver, and he would tell her, now you go home. So she would decide herself, since she said she had to go home like that. Sometimes she was driving her car, sometimes she was taking a taxi, sometimes she was taking public transportation, train, like that. Sometimes she was gone for half an hour, sometimes for many hours, and like that. And some experiments were conducted not in the home of the dog, but in her sister's home, different home. And it turned out actually that generally the dog would be at the door maybe something like 10% of the time. But when she turned home and now she's going home, then 60% of the time the dog would be, when she was on the way now, 60% of the time the dog would be by the door. So it seems that there is some kind of a telepathic contact between dogs. Dogs, someone or other knows that they can come home. And maybe we have that ability too, but maybe the difference is that dogs are too stupid to doubt that they have the ability. We are so intelligent, so we cannot believe we have such abilities, and therefore we don't have. But animals, and Sheldrake has made several other kinds of experiments like that, actually showing that there is some telepathy. Seems to be a very real thing. Again, how does that fit into this whole larger scheme with super soul and like that? I don't know, but there's an awful lot of interesting science going on, and with all the other science actually.
Is there's one branch of science which earlier explained at some point deviated from the general term of what science is, and just turned it into this that you only can only what you see can be true. But
Yeah,
what is it called? Empirical science.
Empirical science, yeah. Science, as we know, all this is empirical. It's because empirical means is observation, systematic observation. So it's all empirical, but no, it's I think positivism is one word that covers it somewhat. Positivism is the philosophy that only what we can observe is real. It must be something we can observe, otherwise it cannot be real. It's another word is naturalism. Naturalism means nature is all there is, and here nature means physical nature, matter. So then there are different kinds of naturalism. There's one called ontological naturalism. This is a very strict naturalism. So there's only matter, that nothing else exists. Another is called methodological naturalism, which is an idea that science must by method only deal with natural, material phenomena, and must assume that everything can be explained in terms of material phenomena. And if you claim that something else is there than just matter, then you're not scientific. Some will claim this is how science is defined. So there's different debates and contentions going on like that.
Isn't that actually just like the description of an atheist?
Yeah, it's an attempt to push atheism under the garb of science, simply by defining that science must be atheistic. And so you don't even have to deal with the evidence. You know, it's in one sense it seems like something, because I counter these arguments and discussions all the time, and and seemingly it seems very relevant, but actually it's when it comes down to it, it's like do you understand the term red herring?
What?
A red herring.
Red.
You don't understand it? It's a red herring. That's an English.
That's a fish, right?
Herring is a fish, a sea. But its expression means it's actually completely irrelevant. You're introducing something that is irrelevant into the discussion. It's a trick to sidetrack you. The question is not whether this is scientific or not. For example, super. The real question is it true or not? You can call it whatever you like. You want to know if it is true or not. Not whether science. So if you want to have a definition of science, which means something can be unscientific and true, fine. Or if you want to, or that something can be scientific and untrue, then that you can define your science like that. We want to know if it's true or not. And a reasonable person will also want his definition of science and the definition of truth to be the same. It doesn't make sense that something can be scientific and untrue, or true or unscientific. So they're sometimes trying to define themselves away from, to distance themselves from things which are not materialistic or atheistic. We should not be bluffed by that. It's a bluff, actually.
Yeah, that's a good question, but is it possible to say anything that science can go back to mean, to have the original meaning of the term? Like also what we can see from history, is that how this kind of society evolves?
Yeah, I mean, it all varies,
Jeg har done this up.
Yeah. You see that there's no consensus. You can even turn on the light in here. There's no consensus understanding of what the word science means. You may have a group of people or group of scientists, and they all agree on the same understanding of science. Then have a then they agree on this is science. But you'll find other scientists or philosophers of science, and they have they'll disagree that no, actually this is a different understanding. Science means something else. Like Michael Behe. We had Michael Behe, I think, in the first presentation on intelligent design. He says that science means to follow the evidence wherever it leads. You have to get some evidence, and you have to whatever conclusion that the evidence pointed to, that's science. So it points to that is a designer behind nature. So that's science. Someone say that's unscientific, but that's the evidence points in that direction. So that's a scientific conclusion. I think that's like a common sense understanding of what science is actually. And someone who doesn't have any agenda, will easily accept, yeah, that's what science means. But there's again so much philosophy or ideology or atheism and religion being pushed in the name of science. So then you get into all this actually just word jugglery and bluffing with words and like that.
Just a comment about this Einstein selling candy, that he thinks he's more religious. I heard from Manila Prabhu that Einstein, he was quite the woman hunter.
Yeah. Why? But that's okay, you can be both a religious person and a womanizer. Why not?
Can be a brahmachari.
You wouldn't be called a brahmachari, no. But, and again, I mean, you can find different quotes from Einstein. Sometimes he appears very atheistic also. So I think it seems like he goes through different stages of his life, but he seemed to become more spiritual at the end, as he became older. Actually. But precisely what he was maybe an impersonalist ultimately, kind of believing in a kind of a oneness of everything. So, yeah.
I heard recently a conversation with Prabhupada in the morning where Prabhupada stressed the point of, we agree on the point of experiment.
Yeah.
That observation is not science, it's just a theory.
Yeah.
Then you cannot prove with your experiment that life comes from matter.
No.
But we can prove with experiment that life comes from life.
Yeah.
That's the point Prabhupada makes.
Yeah. This is, science means, what is it? Observation, hypothesis, experimentation, conclusion. Like that.
Yeah, Prabhupada said they just prove theories. But where is the proof?
Yeah.
So they are not scientifically.
No, if they're honest, they're scientific. They might have a theory and make some experiment, and the experiment disproves the theory, and they will say, the theory is false. So that's honest. That's science also. It's okay. You can have a scientific theory which turns out to be wrong. It doesn't mean it's not science. It just turns out it's a wrong theory. You had, for example, with the cosmology, a generation ago, you had two scientific theories. One was Big Bang theory, and another was steady state theory. And both were scientific theories, mathematically formulated, and so on. But the observations support Big Bang and not steady state. But that doesn't mean steady state was not a scientific theory. It was just disproven. That's also, I think that's also, a philosophical point, that scientific theory doesn't have to be true, but it has to be able to be tested. You have to be able to test it and see if that's it. If you cannot test it, then it's doubtful if it's scientific. But then again, if that's the case, then you would have to discard a lot of modern physics. Yeah, a lot of the quantum physics, a lot of the string theory like that, they cannot test it. I think actually, in order to test string theory, they would have to build an accelerator. I think is it the size of Saturn's orbit around the sun, something like that. They have this big in CERN in France, Switzerland, this big accelerator. But to test actually string theory, they would have some, or was it Mars's orbit, something like that, something possible. So actually, but the theory is already neatly there with mathematics and like that. And in one sense, in principle, they can test it. They just have to build an accelerator, the size of the orbit of Mars or Saturn, like that. But it's not practically possible. So is string theory, is that scientific or not? And that's been debated, and they cannot really. That's actually you reach the limits of where, what is science, what is not science. Ultimately,